morning, good afternoon, good evening. One of the problems we have seen in Zimbabwe is that we seem to have this weakness in which yesterday's liberators, passionate as they were, have become today's oppressors. And in their oppression, they've become worse than the white colonial oppressors. It is tragic that today many Zimbabweans will be looking at the colonial days as the golden age. Why is it that we seem to have a problem with how we run our own affairs? Benjamin, what do you think?
Good day to everybody. It's sad how we turned out. What was a noble cause, the fight for equality, fight for justice, you know, has led us to this point where, we are now fighting amongst ourselves, fighting for that same, you know, human rights that we were fighting for, and against our own brother. I think that is the sad part, having to fight your own brother that is actually oppressing you each and every day. I think it's not only in Zimbabwe. It's most countries in Africa are going through the same process where we went through a process of trying to liberate ourselves, to give ourselves, a name, a voice. And now it seems as if, just a few are benefiting from the whole process. I find it really sad, that brothers could be fighting amongst themselves. We are one family, especially in Zimbabwe. But then, some have just decided that, they are better off than others.
Now let us listen to this short video clip of one of South Africa's famous freedom fighters.
Is there something you could tell the court before pronouncement of your sentence?
All we want is freedom. That's all we want. Freedom. Freedom for children to learn. Freedom for men to work. For mothers to love. For a nation to grow. That's all we want. Equality. For everyone. You see, I am just one of many. A foot soldier. There will be many, many more to follow. So, there is no court of law, no police force, no army that will stop the tide of revolution from turning. There is no punishment that you can lay out in this court. No law, no government can pass that will kill the will of the people. Because we will fight. We will continue to fight until all our people are free. And maybe we can even free you from yourselves. So you can hate us, degrade us, torture us, and kill us. But we will fight. And we will be free. One day, we will be free. Amandla! Amandla!
Where to? Solomon Kalushi Mashango. You are hereby sentenced to death. You will be taken to Pretoria Central Prison on a date to be set, and you will be hanged by your neck until you die.
That's the tragedy of Africa. We seem to be going through these endless tragedies, some of them easily avoidable. His death was carried out by whites. But ever since our independence, many more blacks have died at the hands of fellow blacks. That is the tragedy of Africa. We go through this over and over again. We never seem to learn. We never seem to learn. It is really tragic. In Zimbabwe, 3 years after our independence in 1980, Robert Mugabe launched the infamous Gukurahundi. The principal purpose of Gukurahundi was to force then Dr. Joshua Nkomo and his friends in ZAPU to give up their claim to having a separate political party and join up with Zanu. They finally did in 1987 when they signed the Unity Accord. And by then, 20,000 innocent civilians had been murdered. It is really tragic. We have this in us where we fight for freedom today only to become the next oppressors. I find it an outrage. I was going to just play a short clip of an interview that our armed forces gave, the commander of the armed forces of Zimbabwe gave, which underlined this very issue, that these individuals, although they fought for freedom, they didn't mean it. Let's just listen to this.
We wish to make it very clear to all Zimbabwean citizens that the security organization will only stand in support of those political leaders that will pursue Zimbabwe's value, traditions, belief, for which thousands of lives were lost in pursuit of Zimbabwe's hard-won independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the national interest. To this end, let it be known that the highest office on the land is a straitjacket, whose occupant is expected to observe the objectives of the liberation struggle. We will therefore not accept, let alone support or salute anyone with a different agenda that threatens very existence of our sovereignty, our country, and our people. By the two crucial values, the first and most important, any report and action designed to create instability in Zimbabwe will be made by full force of law. All should be accountable for their actions. Security organizations have resolved.
There you have it, Benjamin. A straight jacket, yeah?
Yes, you know, our problem is, I think, you know, to define who our liberators are, I think every Zimbabwean played their part, you know, in the liberation struggle. You know, everybody could not have carried guns. Who was going to feed the others? You know, who was going to do different chores? You know, who was going to entertain, you know, or give high spirits to those that are you know, are fighting? So, you know, everybody had to play a part. The Chimwidos, the, you know, Mujibas, they played their part. Their part is no different to those that, you know, actually carried the gun, because, you know, once we realize that, then I think, you know, we will stop also this here notion to say we fought for this country. You know, how Zanu PF portrays as if they are the only ones that went to war. There were other people that were not even, you know, Zanu PF or Zapo. They were just neutral, you know, that loved Zimbabwe as a country. So you cannot then say you did it all by yourself. I think that is where the biggest problem is. And then you are giving yourself entitlement to say, since I did it, I am entitled to the riches of the country, to the first choice, the first cuts of Zimbabwe. I think that is the biggest challenge. And I think it's very nonsensical to even be thinking, you know, along those paths. You know, I think it defeats the whole purpose. Zimbabwe was fought for by Zimbabweans, not Zanu PFs, not you know, any other political party, by Zimbabweans. Let's not label who you belong to. If we had done that, I don't think the war would have been won. So this feeling of entitlement to say, since we won, we fought the law, we deserve to rule forever, that is nonsense. Nobody deserves other than Zimbabweans, and Zimbabweans have the right to choose whomsoever they want to rule them at that, you know, particular moment in time. Don't go and, you know, force yourself onto the people. I think this is where our biggest problem is, and Zanu PF is telling themselves lies by saying that they are the only ones that fought for the country. That is nonsense.
Well, even if they were the only ones who fought for the liberation war, let's face it, there were some who were not even born. Are we saying that they are lesser citizens because they contributed nothing? The whole point was the liberation war was so that everyone can live in dignity. They will not have to be exploited and oppressed. The young man there, Solomon, you summed it up. We are fighting for freedom, for human dignity, so that men can work, mothers can love, they've got a future. To say that because I fought in the liberation war, and therefore then I have the divine right to rule, is to defeat the whole point. The mandate to govern the country should be derived from winning the majority votes in a free, fair, and credible election. Those who have the right to a meaningful vote is not qualified that only those who fought in the liberation war or have got connections with those who fought in the liberation war have a meaningful vote. No, everyone has a meaningful vote. Otherwise, we end up with this madness, this endless cycle, where the generation that fought to end oppression yesterday has become today's oppressor. And so the oppressed today have got to fight for their freedom from scratch. And they in turn become tomorrow's oppressors. This has been a problem that has affected many African countries, and Zimbabwe in particular. One of the things that I admire about South Africa, this young man here is actually from South Africa, is that ANC committed themselves to the freedom and liberty of all South Africans. ANC is one of the few African nationalist movements that had a covenant with the people, the Freedom Charter, in which they were stating that everyone has got the freedom and the rights and the dignity. And unlike other countries, ANC has fulfilled that. One of the legacies of Nelson Mandela is that he left that country, South Africa. His first 5 years as president of South Africa, he consolidated the democratic institutions in that country. Yes, those who have followed him, they've tended to be corrupt, incompetent, just like many other African countries, African leaders. But what they failed to do is corrupt South Africa's democratic institutions. The police, last year they were making it very clear that we are here to maintain law and order. Yes, you're allowed to support whichever party you want. But while you're wearing the police uniform, you maintain law and order. You respect all citizens of South Africa. If your party, the party you support, should lose, you salute the party that has won, because that is the democratic will of the people. This is in stark contrast to the interview we've just had there. That was Commander Shinawashe. He's now late. But he was surrounded by other senior army officials. One of the gentlemen there in that video was Constantino Chiwenga. He's now today's vice president. And in that group, you could also see the police commissioner, Augustine Juwuri. Government officials were there, Zanu PF government officials. They never condemned that statement. if anything at all, they are the ones who encouraged it, underlying this weakness that these people believe they have the right, the divine right to rule Zimbabwe. The straitjacket that Commander Husnavash was talking about there is that we will only salute somebody who has liberation war credentials. That's the straitjacket. So many Zimbabweans have had to fight for their freedom, their right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. Zimbabwe, for the last 44 years since our independence, is yet to hold free, fair, and credible elections. We are fighting to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country, because Zanu PF believes they have the right to govern, and therefore then the right to big elections. It is very disappointing indeed. Ben, I don't know whether you want to say your last remarks there.
Well, in closing, I would say, no one has got the divine, power to or authority to rule a country. A country belongs to its citizens, and each citizen has an equal say on the governance of the country. So, we may hear all this here, talk to say we will not salute and we will only salute those that have war credentials. I mean, at some point, we expect that, war veterans are going to die. That's human nature. People die. So what is going to happen in the future? And then whoever is now, I mean, most now ministers and the future of Zimbabwe is in the younger generation. So to continue, talking and maintaining that stance, I think now that is, it's not ancient. We need to focus on building the country. If they could deal on that, I think it would make sense where people would, but they are not doing it. They are ruining everything. And without the pillar, the foundation, of any country, you find exactly like how Zimbabwe is going through, right in the mud, right at the bottom, where their people, their citizens, because you do not treat them right, they do not like you too. They do not have any respect for you. What Zimbabweans are going through, they do not respect Zanu PF. They fear. And that is a very, very dangerous place to be in. We can see it, it just happened in Kenya. That was fear that was exposed in frustration, boiling point. If they're not careful, I hope it doesn't happen to Zimbabwe, but if they're not careful, they're going to you can only back somebody up to a certain point until they reach their boiling point, and they will fight back. And it's going to be very, very sad how this whole thing is going to pan out. It's I think it's just sad that some people think that they themselves are destined to rule the country forever. We've heard Zanu PF talk about chatonga kusvika madhongi amera nyanga, and then at the same time you're talking of democracy. I think you are spitting right at it when you are double standarding just like that. And I feel sorry for them at the end of the day. I really do feel sorry for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. In my closing remarks, I would just like to salute Solomon Malunga. according to this video, he was sent to Pretoria prison and he was hanged. One of many South Africans who died in the fight for human dignity in that country. I think and I hope that South Africa's democratic institutions will hold so that the freedom and the dignity of all South Africans will continue to be upheld and respected. And so far, I think the signs are very good that that is going to be the case. South Africa can boast, and rightly so too, that ever since the country ended apartheid, they've successfully held free, fair, and credible elections. Some of us in Zimbabwe, we are still waiting for our first free, fair, and credible elections. 44 years after independence. That is very sad indeed. Thank you very much, Benjamin, and to everybody who was able to join us. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope you join us again tomorrow. And have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.